In celebration of the greatest week of the year in golfing, I'm going to do a tutorial that's got nothing to do with golf, but everything to do with masking in Lightroom or Photoshop Camera Raw. So the idea is there's so many masking tips out there, but there's one that I find that I go to quite a bit, and that's there's these AI selections, okay? Select subject, select sky, object selections, all those things. And sometimes they're not perfect. In fact, a lot of times they're not perfect. But I think we get caught up thinking that we have to manually fix them. And it's a really great tip to realize that you can take an AI selection and then actually manipulate it by merging it with another AI selection to make it better. And it probably sounds very, very confusing to say it that way. So let's go ahead and jump into the tutorial where I think it'll make a lot more sense. Now, we'll start off in Lightroom Classic, and we're just going to head over here to the masking panel. Just to let you know, if you're using the other version of Lightroom called just Lightroom, it also has a masking panel that is exactly the same as Classic, and we'll actually take a look at a Photoshop example toward the end of this, so you'll see it's the same as well. Now, what this tip has to do with is essentially we've made a selection of something that intersects with the sky. Okay, so you could do a select subject to get there. How we get there really doesn't matter. I think that's going to be my main point with this, but you could do select subject to get there. By the way, I've turned on show overlay, and I've got the black and white overlay turned on here just because it helps you see what we're doing a little bit better. So the default is just going to be the red color overlay, but this just helps you visualize it a little bit better. So we have a mask of the trees here. Now, I made that mask using select subject. I could have just as easily made it with a brush. I could have made it with a gradient. I could have done it with the object selection tool. I'm not saying that this is going to work better, but it's worth a shot just to show you a different way to get there. And I usually just scribble with this, so we'll see what it gives us. Let's see what that one does. So that one actually does, I think, a better job of selecting everything if you saw that versus the select subject. But either way, however you get there, the point is you have a mask of something that intersects with the sky. Okay, and if I turn that overlay off and I go under the tone section and I start to make an adjustment here, and I'll zoom in. Now, one of the things that happens is this adjustment creates a lot of ghosting of bright areas along the edges. That's usually your hint that you've gone too far. So I would say, number one, when you start to see those things, you've gone too far. Okay, it's artificial, it's fake, and it shouldn't be that far. If I were to make it dark, you'll start to see the same thing. But let's say you start to see it earlier, or for some reason you find it looks good on your photo, it doesn't look too overdone, which again, I think the worst thing is it tends to look overdone. But let's say you get there and it's not working out. What you can do is go to subtract, and subtract select sky. And you'll see there, that got rid of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to undo that step. Let's turn the overlay on again so you can see what it did. Subtract, select sky. And you can see we get a much better selection from it. Okay, so that's an example with a landscape photo. Let's switch gears. We've got bird and a sky. So again, I wanted to go in here, select the subject, and I'd probably want to boost the shadows a little bit, just a little bit contrasty for my taste there. So boost those shadows a little bit, do something to it. And then again, if I started to go too far and you see some halos around there, again, usually an indicator you went too far, but let's say for some reason that this is the edit that you need to make, or you find that it really is negatively affecting part of the photo. So let's turn that overlay back on, and I'm actually going to change it back to the red, and you'll see it. If I zoom in, again, if I don't make too big of an adjustment, you wouldn't see it, but you'll see it there. You'll see it down there in the talons. Seen a couple other places in between the wings here. This is another big one. So these could feasibly, without making too much of an adjustment like I was talking about before, these could feasibly still stand out to you. So what you do is the same exact thing. Make your selection, whatever that selection is that's going to intersect with the sky. Then go to subtract and then just do select sky. So let's zoom in here a little bit on the wing. So I'll go to subtract, select sky. And you can see what happened right there. I'll undo it for a second, and then I'll go back up there and I'll redo. And you can see it does a nice job of getting rid of that. So that's the important thing, is to be creative when you start to use these tools and think about Think about a little bit of the nuts and bolts on how they work and how you can manipulate some of these settings to work for you if you're not getting that perfect selection. So let's switch gears. We'll take a look at a portrait and we'll jump over into Photoshop. We've got to pay the bills. So quick word from our sponsor, which is always me. I've got a course out there. If this stuff interests you, I've got a course out there called Mastering the Sky with AI. I think the sky is probably one of the most important parts of our outdoor photos, that is, creative landscape, outdoor nature photography, and learning how to edit it and really take control over it, I think is important. So I've got a really fun course. It's basically broken up into 3 parts. The creative part, nothing to do with sky replacements or anything, just crafting the sky to look the way that you want it to look. Second part of the course does dive deeper into sky replacements, and then the third part of the course is actually generating your own skies with AI if that's something that you ever wanted to do. The bulk of the course is really part 1 as far as crafting and editing and learning what to do with your sky. So it's a really fun course on sale now. I hope you'll swing by to find out more. So back into the video here, I've got Photoshop open. If you opened up a RAW file, it would open up into Adobe Camera Raw. I've already opened this into the main Photoshop interface, so I can just go down here to the filter menu. Camera Raw filter takes us into Camera Raw. As far as masking is concerned, it's going to be exactly the same. You're not going to get any differences from Lightroom or Photo or using RAW or non-RAW for that one. So the same idea goes for this one. Let's do a select subject. Okay, so it's going to put a selection around them. Again, I turned on that black and white overlay so that we can see it here. So we would go in here, we would make some type of an adjustment, and you would start to see whether it's the hair, whatever that happens to be that's on the subject, but most likely the hair, you might start to see some odd areas start to show up inside of there. So if I make this a little darker, maybe a little bit brighter, we can start to see a little bit creeping in there. Again, it's not too bad on this one, but it did have some good wispy hair, so I just thought it made a good example to demonstrate with. You never know what you're going to come across here. So you start to make your adjustments. Again, let's turn on that overlay just so you can really see what's happening here. And then we go over here to subtract. Again, select sky. And you can see that there. So it got rid of that. Now it added a little bit, subtracted a little bit from her face. Then you can just go to add and you can just grab a brush here and you can fill in any of those areas that you wanted to. But we're gonna backtrack a little bit. Let's go reset all of this, because we can approach this from another angle, okay? Let's say you're doing an adjustment to the sky. So I make a selection of the sky. And in this case, you can see it's gone in there and it's actually pulled some of the hair and a little bit even some of the facial features of the couple in there. Well, we take the same thing we did, we just do it, I don't want to say in reverse, it's just almost opposite. Okay, where before we were selecting the subject and then subtracting the sky, there's a lot of cases where you'll select the sky and you'll see that it will start to bleed over into the subject like this is done here. Well, then you just go over, we've selected the sky, go over to subtract, and then do subtract, select subject. Keep an eye right up there at the top of the head. That's where I think you're going to see the most. Look at that. Okay, so if you're having trouble in reverse where you're making an adjustment to the sky and not the subject in a photo, then you just, in a way, just reverse it. Still make your sky selection, but subtract the subject instead of before, where what we were doing was selecting a subject in the photo and actually subtracting the sky from it. Now, if you're into this type of selections and masking and all this stuff, I've got another tutorial for you here. It's a great place to go to next, where I talk about select subject inside of Lightroom or Camera Raw versus the select subject that we can see inside of Photoshop. So they look the same, but I think you're going to see that they can actually be different in the way that they work or the uses that you need for them. So if you're looking for another tutorial, that's a great place to go to next.